When and where were you born?
I was born in Jamaica, Long Island, June 25th, 1917.
Okay, can you tell me something about your parents, your brothers and your sisters, and your formative years growing up?
Well, my father was a lawyer. Both are deceased. My mother and father were deceased. My father was a lawyer, chiefly in the field of real estate and condemnation. I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters. My 2 sisters are nuns in retirement, Convent of the Sacred Heart in Kenwood, Albany, New York. I have an older brother who's a Dominican priest in Minnesota. Another brother, Anthony, Jesuit, died some years ago. And another brother, Declan, who is also deceased.
Okay. Can you tell me about your schooling? Where did you attend grammar school and high school?
I went to St. Mary's Star of the Sea Grammar School in Far Rockaway, Long Island, New York. And then I went to Brooklyn Prep, which is probably the greatest of the Jesuit schools in the area. Graduated from there in 1934, entered the Jesuits after that.
Can you tell me about some of the moments at Brooklyn Prep that stood out in your mind? How did they prepare you for later life, the Jesuits?
Well, the best thing I had there, of course, is the classical education, Latin for 4 years and Greek for 3 years. And that led me to major in classical education, classics, all during my seminary years. And it certainly prepared me for the field of history that I ultimately went into.
Okay, and where did you attend college and seminary?
I entered the seminary, Wernersville, Pennsylvania, 1934, in August. Spent 4 years at the seminary there. Then went to our house at Innisfader, which for a period of 2 or 3 years was a house of philosophy. Spent 1 year at Innisfader in Roslyn, Long Island. Received my degree from Georgetown in 1940 because the 2 years of noviceship did not really count toward the collegiate education. And then the degree of, oh dear heavens, it'll come to me, in philosophy from the Pontifical University in New York, and then went on taught at Loyola School in New York, and we'd come back to that in a moment or two.
Okay, can you tell me, you say you got a degree in philosophy.
Licentiate in philosophy, that's the word. Okay.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, you say you had your degree in philosophy. Can you tell me about some of your special interests in that field? Who are some of your favorite philosophers, or what were some of your personal interests?
Philosophy was a rather rugged 3 years, difficult, and to be absolutely honest, I was very delighted to have completed the 3 years satisfactorily. I had no great interest in philosophy, really, and none of the philosophers that I studied were of importance to me, nor did they have a great impact on my life.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, our favorite field, history. Can you tell me about your special field of interest in the historical field?
Well, after teaching for 3 years at Loyola School in New York, I came back to Woodstock College, Woodstock, Maryland, for the 4 years of theology. While there, I met Reverend Father Ryan, who's me called Abe. I can't really remember his first name. He taught church history, interested me in it, and over the period of the 4 years, I read these 64, 65 volumes of the history of the popes, and the name again escapes me. I'm getting dotty, but a great historian. That will cut to be some other time. But I read the 64 volumes of the history of the popes. It took a long time.
Okay. Okay, Woodstock. Is that where you started teaching school? Was that your first teaching experience?
My first teaching experience was in New York City at Loyola School, 84th Street and Park Avenue.
Did you teach history or other subjects?
No, I taught. Loyola School was a very distinctive school. It was during the war, 1941 to 44, and the largest class that I ever had at Loyola School was 9. and that was not too much. The school was running into decay there, and the war was on. The tuition was maybe 3 or 4 times as much as any of our other Jesuit schools. But it was a pleasure to teach there. I was able to teach and teach well, and assign a great deal of work and have a quiz every single day, because to correct 8 papers is not a major problem. But in the course of teaching there, the school had classes from 4th grade through the 8th, and then 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year high school. In the 3 years there, at one time or another, I taught 4th grade, 7th, 8th grade, 3rd year Latin, English, Greek, and religion to 3rd year, and to some in 4th year. So it was a varied experience and a thrilling experience.
Okay, when did you start teaching at St. Peter's College?
1951 in September, after finishing the course of studies in the Jesuits and spending 2.5, 3 years at Georgetown University getting my PhD.
Okay, and why did you decide to teach at St. Peter's, or were you assigned to the school?
I was assigned. In those days, one had no choice. The so-called assignment, or status, would come out on July the 31st, and I noticed that I was assigned to St. Peter's College. I knew where it was. It was on the other side of the river. That's all I knew.
Okay. And what did you hope to accomplish once you started at St. Peter's? What were some of your goals and expectations coming to the school?
Well, I wanted to teach well. That was certainly true. I wanted to get across certain fundamental principles in historical study, but above all, principles in theology and philosophy on which one could live. And I worked at that very earnestly over all the years that I've been here. And I also hoped to encourage my students to go on for further studies in medicine, law, dentistry, or graduate school of one sort or another, if they had the capability for it.
Okay, and what were some, well, aside from hearing about it, it was across the river. When you arrived on campus, what were some of your first impressions of the college itself?
My first impression of the college was not particularly enjoyable. I went down Glenwood Avenue to where I was supposed to be living. It was a ramshackle house with about 7 or 8 rooms, falling apart but converted into a Jesuit residence. It was called Lower Slobovia. And if you walk down toward past the rec center, or start walking past the rec center, if you see a hydrant, go another 100 yards, and that was Lower Slobovia. The maintenance man lived there until it was too impossible to raise a family under the circumstances. Therefore, a certain number of Jesuits arrived there. That was my first impression.
Okay. How about the campus itself, other than Lower Slobovia?
Campus consisted of one building on Kennedy Boulevard and Glenwood Avenue, McDermott Hall, and then beyond McDermott Hall, coming down toward West Side Avenue, the railroad car, forget what they call it, a 1-story building, classroom building, like comparable to an army barracks, but much longer than an army barracks. And then McDermott Gym, I think they called it that, a wooden gymnasium, very, very small, which was nothing but a basketball court. And the science building was there also. But that was the whole campus.
Okay, you started in 1951. What was the first class or subject you taught during that year?
European history. 3 courses in European history, mostly to business school students, because the School of Business Administration was separate from the College of Arts and Sciences. And then I taught an elective, and I can't say what the elective was.
Okay, during the 50s, what were some of the other classes or different course titles that you were involved in or taught?
In the history department at that time, and still true to a greater extent, one would teach 2 or 3 courses of Western civilization to freshmen, and then elective courses. And during that period, I taught courses on Stuart England, origins of the First World War, Europe between two world wars, the French Revolution. I can't recall any others, but there were others.
Okay, we'll move down the list here. And it says here, you wrote under here, how did the attendance of women on campus change the landscape of the school at the time you were affiliated with St. Peter's? And you wrote down here, ha ha ha.
Is that what I?
Sounds like a good story. Let's talk about it.
Well, I love the prospect of women on campus. As they came in fall of '66, prior to their coming, there was a committee of 1,000 made up, obviously, of the total male student body, the whole student body, all masculine. The committee of 1,000 frightfully opposed to the presence of women. My feeling was that if the women came, it would be a great challenge to the men, and they would suddenly also wash their hair at least once a week and polish their shoes. That was not quite, they did not fulfill my expectations. Within a year and a half, the women were just as slobby as the men.
Anything else stick out about women on campus? Or
Well, they were a challenge to the men to this extent that from the very first moment that they came, and right up until June of 97, they were all far superior intellectually to the men. If you look at the peacocks, what do you call them? Most Noble Order of the Peacocks. Every year, year after year after year, 7 or 8 out of the 10 were women, and I was delighted with it. They did challenge the men, and it was a delight to have them.
Okay, and can you tell me about ethnic and racial diversity on campus from the time you started until the present day?
Fascinating. When I first came, in my first class, I'd say it was 1/3 Italian, 1/3 Polish, 1/3 Irish, and a couple of Germans. In the last class that I taught, back, say 1985, there were no Irish. There was one Polish fellow, German, but he really didn't come from Germany itself, came down from the Croatian field, but he was Germanic in name. No Italians, no Irish, and the rest were alien to them at least. Puerto Rican, black, they had no blacks prior to that, and Filipinos, all sorts of people from Latin and Central America and from the West Indies, and Indians were coming in. Some Vietnamese in '85, a few Korean, but a highly diversified ethnic group.
Very good. Okay, and let's talk about your regular schedule when you were as a teacher. Okay, what kind of work schedule did you have during an average day during the academic year? Just in general.
Well, it'd be 4 periods a day, 3 times a week. Well, these 4 classes, 3 times a week, which means 12 sections, 12 classes. And at that time, and ever since, there was a certain amount of liberty in selecting the schedule that you wanted to have within certain limits. And in the history department, by and large, we were able, if we wanted, to have a 4-day week, manage that, and 1 day off. So we could pick the sections that we wanted, and some would like to start in early in the morning and finish up by noontime. Others would like to spread it out. I spread it out.
What were some of the duties you performed as a professor? Did you have paperwork or preparation for classes? What were some of the characteristics of being a professor?
On the academic level. On the ordinary work of preparation for class, assigning papers, tests, essays, term papers. It was a full schedule. And since when I was teaching at that time, we had 4 sections, and that would be about, let's say, 30, give or take 1 or 2 in each of the sections. So there's 120 students, a lot of paperwork. But not that much preparation, because when you had the 3 sections of Western Civ, it was one preparation. All right.
Very good. Doing great, Father McMullen.
Thank you.
Yes, very good. Okay. Okay, I asked you about the 50s, but from the 60s until the 80s, what were some of the other course titles or subject areas you taught within the history department?
The 60s to the 80s. Well, and I would be repeating there the age of the Stuarts, background of the First World War, and Europe between 2 world wars, the French Revolution. Those were the courses that I'd be teaching and preparing for. And we had freedom to select those, to create those electives ourselves, and then to carry them out.
What were some of your favorites among those, and what were some of the positive aspects of each class that you felt helped you through?
Well, I would simply say this, Alan, that I very much enjoyed teaching Europe between 2 world wars, because my doctorate was on the background, diplomatic background of the Munich Agreement of 1938, and therefore I was very much interested in the whole preparation, if you want to call it a preparation, for the Second World War, the preliminaries, the diplomatic and military background, and then the actual war itself. But I also love the Stuart period, because at the heart I feel myself to be English, although I'm certainly not. But I felt that England molded America and molded European history more than any other country.
Okay. When you taught, what was a typical classroom look like, and how was it arranged, just from a mental imagination?
It's arranged pretty much the same as it is today. If you take 30 students, that would mean 6 rows of 5 in each row, up and down, blackboard, areas where you could put up maps and notes, and then the teacher's desk in the front. I always liked a podium and a little platform, because it gave me a sense of height, which I don't have, you know. And although normally I prefer to be walking on the ground because I'm close to the earth, much closer than these 6-footers are, but in teaching I like to be up on their level, looking down at them, dominating them. Go ahead.
Right on. Okay. Well, we've talked about the Oxford style gowns with past subjects. Do you recall wearing them? And did teachers have to wear them? And what were some of your impressions about the aspects of Gannon that he left on?
I like that, partly because I'm a snob, and I like the whole concept of the gowns. And they came with Father Robert Gannon, who was the first academic dean. And he got the impression or the idea of it from either Cambridge or Oxford. I don't know whether I think it was Cambridge, where the students wore them there, and the Dons wore also an academic gown, somewhat more full and longer than the ordinary student gowns. But I like the whole idea.
And of course, students had to dress accordingly as well.
What's that?
Students had to dress accordingly as well.
Senior.
Yes.
Seniors had to wear the academic gowns.
Right.
Underclassmen not.
How'd you run a typical class period? Was it mostly lecture, or did you have free discussion, or what kind of things did you instill in the classroom as a teacher?
Well, first of all, when we when starting way back there, we didn't have a lot of the sophisticated material, machinery for lectures. Had the blackboard. Most of my lectures, most of my classes were lectures, carefully prepared, and so frequently I'd give an accompanying sheet repeating, let's say, the causes of the French Revolution or the background of the French Revolution. I rarely put diagrams on the board because I can't draw. I use the blackboard only to spell difficult names like World War I, W-O-R-L-D, W-A-R, so that they could catch it easily. Okay?
Yeah, I need help too, so that would come in handy for me. Awesome. Okay, what were some of the school-related societies, committees, or clubs that you were a moderator of or were involved in?
Well, I was hoping you'd come to that.
Great.
Because from about 1952-53, I was the moderator of the Men's Glee Club. And I was the moderator of the Men's Glee Club from, let's say, 53 until about 1975, 76, 77. At that time, and during the whole of that period, the Men's Glee Club consisted of about, varied between 55 and 60 men. Carefully chosen by our director of the Glee Club, G. Marston Haddock, Englishman, and then his successor, Patrick Kleins. During that period, we would have rehearsal once a week, 8 o'clock, 6 to 8, about 15 concerts a year at girls' colleges, and 3 or 4 of them would be overnight concerts. In my room, I have about 40 glasses, cocktail glasses, wine glasses, or shot glasses from 35 or 40 different women's colleges, but that would represent only half the colleges that we went to. Up and down the East Coast, a tremendous number of colleges. And it was the elite activity, as I discovered later, because of the travel, because students didn't travel, they didn't have the money to travel. But it was also the brightest students in the school were in it, and it was a very, very wonderful fraternity. I meet students so often at these class reunions, as I was in the Glee Club. First thing they say, and then they look around the room to see what other guys were in the Glee Club. And that was the elite fraternity. Then in 1966, and I pride myself very much on this, and this I'm glad to record for history, the college decided to go co-ed in spite of the Committee of 1,000. The president of the college, who was a committee of one, decided we'd go co-ed. And I spoke to the president very shortly after he made that decision. I said, when the women come in September 1966, there'll be no activities for them. The men simply will not permit them to go into the yearbook, the college paper, the debating society, any of the activities. I'd like to start a women's glee club. He said, go ahead. And he gave me full permission. I then went to Jersey City State College. Am I talking too fast?
Oh, you're good. You're good.
To Jersey City State College, and spoke to Dr. George Hansler and invited him to come. This is in February 1966, to come in September of 1966 and begin a women's glee club. He was delighted, and we never talked of salary, and I really never did find out what salary he had, but he was perfectly pleased with the arrangement, and I certainly was. We never discussed money. He came, and on the second day that the women were there, we had tryouts for the women's glee club. As I had foreseen and had told the president, there was no room in any of the activities for women. 50 women tried out, and Mr. Haddock told me afterward, he said, I tried out 50 and I have taken 49 of them, but there's one girl there, Eileen, I forget her last name, but if I did remember it, I wouldn't tell you. He said, she's the only one I can't possibly take. She has absolutely no voice. She has no concept whatsoever of music. I said, Dr. Hansler, makes no difference. Dr. Haddock, makes no difference, because we need a business manager, so we took Eileen as business manager. The Women's Glee Club then consisted from 66 until about 84, 83 or 84, of about 40 or 50 women, and in turn, they only had maybe 2 or 3 overnight concerts, but they had a lot of concerts here, and ultimately, initially against the will of the Men's Glee Club, joint concerts at Christmas and in the spring concert.
Sounds wonderful. You have a nice the shot glass collection. That's a topper from all the women's colleges. This may have to get into the school paper. No, I'm just
I'll
kidding.
show it to you sometime. but it's Rosemont, Immaculata, Mount St. Vincent, Marymount, Manhattan, Marymount, Tarrytown, St. Joseph's in Brooklyn, in Boston, Emmanuel College, and then 2 or 3 others up there in the New England area, and then, oh dear God, that college in Welch College, forget the name of it, outside Philadelphia, but 35, 40, 50, 60 colleges.
Did the Glee Club perform for men's colleges very much, or?
Almost never, because the part of the attraction of being in the men's Glee Club was associating with the female women ladies.
Yes. Okay. How about concerts here on campus? Did they do a lot of?
We had a spring concert and a fall and a Christmas concert, jammed. Always jammed.
And can you sing Peacock Parade for us?
The greatest part of being the moderator of the men's Glee Club, and what the directors loved so much about me as being moderator, is because I was not director, but as moderator, I can't sing a note. And therefore, I never was able to interfere with the operation of the Glee Club. Certainly if I could sing, I would have interfered, because I'm that kind of a person. But I couldn't sing a note, therefore, I never interfered. And all I did was make the business arrangements and overnight arrangements.
Very good. I can't sing either, so I'm not going to sing it for you either.
No.
Okay. Well, I guess you heard about the story about the peacock on campus recently.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Fred Cranwell tells me that you took care of the Peter and Penelope, the peacocks here in the early 50s. Do you have some recollections on that?
Oh, I do, but Fred, who's a very nice person, is just a little bit off. Father Gus Grady was the one who had the peacock. And I used to help Father Grady with it. But no, I really didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't like the smell, and I didn't like the sound. The awful, strident sound of the peacock was very repugnant to me. So I had nothing to do with that.
Okay. I understand. Okay, any other societies or clubs that you were involved in, aside from the Glee Club and assisting Father Grady?
No, really, because that took up a great deal of my time.
Okay, did you have interaction with any students outside of the classroom, such as dining halls, class trips, or any other study sessions?
No, really. Well, we had some class trips occasionally. Very rare, though, and most of my extracurricular activity was with men in the Glee Club. We'd be sitting at lunch together, a group of 8 or 10, or 2 or 3, but we were always very close together. It was a nice fraternity.
Okay, what are some of the rules and regulations you had to abide by as a teacher, coming down from administration? Did you have any set things you had to do and not do?
I have always prided myself on the fact that the teachers at St. Peter's College and at all Jesuit colleges have an academic freedom that is very, very special and really not imitated by many others. We were under no real restrictions, as long as we didn't have sexual intercourse in the classroom.
Okay. That's a good one. That's one that keeps you out of trouble.
You might have to cut that one out, but that's all right.
No, we want that. How red's my face coming here? That's good. Okay, and changing the pace a little bit. Have you been published, and what are some of the titles and contents of your work?
I really had no opportunity to publish any books. For a period of, 10 or 12 years, I wrote book reviews for America very frequently. But that was about the limit. And 1 or 2 book reviews for the American Historical Association. But I did not write books.
Did any book reviews stand out that you...
No, none in particular.
Okay. What impact do you think a Jesuit education holds for you as a teacher and a Jesuit at St. Peter's?
Phrase the question again.
Okay,
please.
I probably didn't do that right.
No.
What impact does a Jesuit education hold for you as a teacher, teaching Jesuit values, and as yourself a Jesuit?
Well, all I can say is that independently of my personal qualities as a teacher, and I think very highly of myself there, but apart from that, as a Jesuit priest in teaching, I have always attempted, in an insinuating sort of fashion, to create, disseminate, and insinuate Catholic values, and I've done it. And men coming back say that they learned from the Jesuit education they had here, and they're speaking to me and perhaps thinking of me, that they not only learned how to think, but they learned how to think in an ethical kind of fashion.
How about history majors in particular? What was your advice to them?
Get your doctorate. And that's not, I'm not being sarcastic. One of the major problems in post-collegiate education is that it's easy to get the master's, it's easy to do the 3 years of study for the and coursework for the doctorate, but getting the ding-dong dissertation is the thing that breaks their back. And there are a great many teachers that I know of, some here at the college, who did not finish the dissertation and have been frustrated ever since.
I know one who's shall remain nameless. He's been working on his since 1972.
Yeah.
Hasn't finished yet. But
the dissertation is the backbreaker.
It's tough. It is very tough. I want to talk to you later about that.
No, I was lucky in that regard. I made my doctorate at Georgetown University, and when it came to the dissertation, I spoke to the local congressman, and I forget his name now. The family ran a laundry down on the west side, a Polish name, and his secretary, John Murphy, was able to get me a small cubicle, soundproof cubicle, in the Library of Congress. And I would go to Georgetown University at 8:30, go from Georgetown University to the library, 8:30 in the morning, and on the table, beside my typing table, there'd be a stack of 8 or 10 books. I would use them during the day, put them in the on the other side of the table, and with a note to be removed, and a request for 6 or 7 different books. The books would be there the next day. I had my own typewriter there, my own paper, bought my lunch, and I had no waste of time. I never had to go searching out books on the shelves of the library and going through the tedious process of getting them signed up and all of that. I was lucky.
That's
that
wonderful.
cut out weeks and months of really wasted time before I could sit down to work.
How long did it take you overall to finish your dissertation?
1 year and 2 summers.
That is very impressive. Very impressive. Can you tell me about the religious atmosphere here on campus at St. Peter's, and how it has evolved through the years as a school, would you say?
That's a very, very difficult question to answer. When I first came here, we had May devotions in the quadrangle every day at noontime. There was no obligatory mass, to the best of my knowledge, but there was a first Friday mass, and there were masses during the week, and on special occasions there were special masses that would fill the chapel, which was very small. It's disappeared now. It was in the on the first floor of the science building, the old science building.
That would be the sodality of the...
Sodality of the...
Yes. Okay, very good. Okay, how would you describe the levels of school spirit, various ceremonies, the atmosphere of camaraderie on campus during your time here?
I always thought that there was a nice school spirit. They followed the basketball games. Until recent years, they were very, very... they filled the auditorium and the basketball courts, a great deal of enthusiasm. I think there was a good warm spirit, although every other issue of the powwow from 1951 until 1997 has an editorial on the apathy on campus. But the apathy was there in 51, they allege, and continued to the present, but it wasn't. There was a good spirit. It just makes material for an editorial.
What were some of the, did you get involved with some of the pep rallies or basketball? Do you do any...
With the who?
Pep rallies or basketball games, do you attend and do you show...
Oh, I did attend. In the last few years I haven't, but I attended them very, very carefully. because frequently enough my students were involved.
Okay, and how would you compare the spirit of St. Peter's men and women or fans to other schools across the other Catholic schools or other secular schools that you've had contact with?
I honestly can't answer that question. I don't know.
Okay, commencement exercises. As a teacher, you're involved with them. Can you tell me about your first commencement exercise that you were involved with and subsequent ones? What's involved with the process?
Apart from dressing for it with the doctoral robe, one of the professors, whose name will be unmentioned, started and was succeeded by another professor later. And the big thing during any commencement exercise was the betting on the length of the guest speaker's speech. And there'd be about 70 of us putting in $1, $1.50, $2. And since there were 70 of us, it was limited to about a 15-second period. So it would be 16 minutes and 15 seconds. But that was something that we paid very close attention to and watched it very carefully. And then at the end of it, we received the money. I also, God forgive me for saying this, but if I'm going to be a historian, I've got to be honest, I read a great many paperbacks. The programs that we had were sufficiently large so that I could hold up the program, and I covered a great many paperbacks in the course of it. Anything else?
That's funny. Did you ever win the bet?
No, I never did.
Okay.
No, I was always a few seconds off.
What was the longest one you remember? You don't have to mention.
Oh, I do. But I
please,
forget the man's name. The graduation was at Dickinson High School in the gymnasium. The temperature was about 102, and the speaker was a congressman, but he gave the longest of all talks and the hottest. It was the most horrid thing I have ever been through. Everybody was sweating. It was frightful.
How many paper books did you go through on that day?
Oh, dear God, I don't know. I couldn't read that actually because the sweat was pouring down through my eyes.
What year was that, do you know? We can look it up later.
It would be really around late 50s or early 60s. But look at it, was the only one we had in Dickinson High School, I think.
Okay. That's funny. Okay, and would you, have you sponsored or have met any of the honorary degree recipients? Have you, put in anybody's name for an honorary degree?
No, I have never had any connection with honorary degree recipients, nor did I sponsor them in that sense or read the citation. No, I didn't.
Have you met any, or did any have a distinct impression upon you?
No, except they were nice, and they were honorary degree people and worthy of it, but made no great impression on me.
Okay, have you met any famous people, such as celebrities, political figures, or fellow Jesuits, famous people who attended, who came to the campus and you've met or have had contact with over the years?
Well, I've known several of the congressmen. I can't recall any others, though I met so many who are here, who came, but just at a luncheon or a dinner, and not a lasting relationship.
Okay, we're wrapping up now. What was the best advice or guidance you gave out to students or anybody else taking your classes as a teacher?
I'd have to think of that for a moment or two. The best advice that I gave to students. Work hard, plan for the future, look ahead, and think always of the final days of your career so that what you're doing in freshman year will pave the way for a successful entry into graduate school. I'm just talking off the top of my head. That's it. And, of course, intellectual honesty.
That is important, isn't it?
It works.
Yes. Okay. Do you well, you're not an alumnus, but you're an important part of the school. Do you support any of the alumni functions, or do you attend any of?
I try to attend the alumni affairs, yes, and especially the reunions. And I've always been close to people running the alumni association, so that I've been at any of those dinners that they've had. I've been until the last year or so. I've been very regular at that, a regular attendant.
Okay. Have you held any administrative posts or any other jobs on campus?
Oh yes,
yeah.
I've been at one point. I was very, very important. I was academic
You still
dean.
are. You still are. Come on.
I was academic dean from 71 to 75 or 76. At a very critical time in the college history, and there I would be somewhat careful in what I say. There had been an academic dean who was really not highly competent, left the college, and there were riots, student riots, and on one occasion I spent the whole day in the office of the Vice President, Father Ed Ryan, from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, and there were about 60 or 70 students in what is now the academic vice president, George Martin's office. And there were 50, 60 students in there. Father Ed Ryan was in one of the offices there alone, and I was there with another teacher. And they were noisy, but not vandalous. And the police came at 6 o'clock and arrested them all. 50 of them, put them in jail overnight. But then there was a great deal of dissension and division on campus, frightful division of the faculty. And when this dean left, and he was really pushed out, I was put in as acting dean. And if you want to run things in a political fashion, and you don't want to have a search committee, appoint somebody as an acting, and then you slide them from acting into real. And that's what happened with me. I was acting dean for 6 or 8 months, and then they made me dean. And to be perfectly candid and absolutely honest, I was put in because I had the respect of the faculty. And as soon as I was able to straighten out the difficult situation in the college and restore the respect of the dean, of the faculty for the administration, and respect of the students for the faculty, I got out because I didn't want it in the first place. All right.
What were some of your functions in your capacity as dean? What were some of the things you did on a daily basis?
As dean?
Yes.
Viewing classes, interviewing new teachers, talking to department heads, and that was the big thing. Meetings with the heads of departments, the chairman of departments, and outlining a policy that I wanted to be instituted and to be carried out, and especially to get the trust and respect of the department chairman. If you lose your chairman, you lose everything. And I did have the respect of the chairman, and they were able to work down with their faculty members to secure the goals that we were striving for.
Okay. Any other capacities that you were involved in other than academic dean? Or
I successfully evaded, for all my years from 1951 until the present, chairmanship of the history department. I always managed to have some project going so that when the election came, I'd say I can't run for chairman because I have to spend a year in Africa lecturing in Uganda at a British university, or some other project.
Okay.
But I did spend a year as a lecturer, senior lecturer, in Makerere University in Kampala in Uganda.
Wow.
Very delightful.
How'd that work out? What was involved in that?
It was one of the happiest years of my life. Uganda is the Switzerland of Africa. most beautiful countryside you can imagine. Absolutely splendid. And we're 39 miles from the equator, 300-acre campus, lovely, delightful atmosphere. Temperature varied from 85 to 90 by day, 80 to 85 at night, and as I say, just 39 miles from the equator, but we were 5,000 feet above Lake Victoria. Beautiful.
That's wonderful. Okay, and in the late 80s and also to the present day, what are some of the activities you've been involved with as part of the Jesuit community?
Well, see, I had to leave here in 1985. New Jersey passed a law in 85 saying that anybody who reached a certain age, and I always forget what age it is, either 65 or 70, I think it was 65, had to lose tenure and be completely separated, cut off from everything in the college. Father Joe Shue, 2 years ahead of me, had been chairman of the biology department for 30 years, and a very major focus of concern and interest in the Alumni Association. He's dropped and left the college, went up to Syracuse, and worked out up there for a while in a parish. And I saw the handwriting on the wall, jumped the gun, and got a position at St. Joseph by the Sea High School in Staten Island from 85 to 95. But I lived at the college most of the time. So in that period, I was away from the college. Then they repealed the law, and now I can come back as an adjunct.
And have you been teaching since then?
Since 85, yes. Teaching since 95. Teaching as an adjunct in the history department and supervising students doing their practice education, practice teaching.
Very good, very good. Okay, and last couple questions. In your estimation, can you tell me the value of the St. Peter's experience for you as it pertains to your life, and how would you characterize it for anyone else trying to get an education here?
Well, from an educational point of view, it's broadened my horizons, given me amazing experience in dealing with the human personalities, with men, with women, watching them at college during their collegiate careers, watching them growing afterward, but above all, an expansion in every direction. And I think the most lasting thing is a positive enjoyment. I love teaching. I love working with college students. And although I'm 80 years of age, it has seemed to have kept me young. Young in spirit, young in enthusiasm, young in mind. So it's been a very healthy, beautiful experience for me.
I agree with you. It's done right by you. And do you have any advice for any potential St. Peter's students, maybe who might view this in the future?
Who might going into teaching?
Oh,
is that what you mean?
Oh yeah, the at St. Peter's. Any students who might be watching, what do you think they could expect, or what would you think is probably the greatest or most ideal points of the college itself, from your point of view?
Integrity, search, demands, collegiate demands, academic demands, and above all, a very wide range preparation for marriage, life, Christian life, and for professional life, whether it be medicine, dentistry, law, the judiciary, anything.
Okay, and do you have any other parting advice or anything you'd like to say to, for the record, for the historical
the lights
record?
are too bright.
We seem to get that a lot, which is good. Father McMullen, thank you very much.
I'm delighted to be here, Alan.
I appreciate it.
I think you're doing a wonderful thing, and I offer you my congratulations.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad to have been able to help and to cooperate to the best of my extent.
Father McMullen, pleasure's all mine.